personally because this is a very important function for the government of Kenya. So my presence here is no less. I have his full instructions to do what he was meant to do in this function, and he would have, as I have said, he would have wanted to do it personally because this is a very important function for us. But let me say that I'm delighted to join you on his behalf for the closing of this induction and the beginning of your service on behalf of our country. I am confident the ministry has delivered a thorough primer that will make you stronger advocates of Kenya and Africa's interests. I congratulate all of you once again on your appointments, and in the same breath ask you to hit the ground running in the service of our nation. You are in a privileged position, but they are positions of service to the country. You represent an Africa whose economic promise is yet to fully materialize, and consequently, a continent that is yet to fully claim its rightful place in the global order. This is not a new task or a new desire. It was embedded in our quest for independence from colonialism, as it was for almost every other African nation. There is no longer honor than serving one's country. In this sense, you are following in the footsteps of giants like our founding father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Ahmed Ben Bella, Sekou Toure, Modibo Keita, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Kenneth Kaunda, Nelson Mandela, amongst many illustrious icons. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Foreign Affairs, Cabinet Secretary Monica Juma, Permanent Secretary Macharia Kamau, and their team for leading a spirited, fine-tuned campaign that resulted in Kenya's endorsement for a non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. Ladies and gentlemen, and your team, congratulations. This is an emphatic recognition of Kenya by the Africa Union and an indicator of trust in our capacity and ability to project Africa's interests and secure peace and prosperity for our continent. We are humbled by your confidence and promise, our commitment, dedication, and collaboration. We shall be true to our common aspirations and ideals that form the foundation of African statehood. Kenya will be a strong voice for Africa at the United Nations Security Council. We look forward to your robust support. I am further informed that securing this endorsement has been a team effort, and therefore I warmly applaud the contribution of our Special Envoy for the Security Council campaign, and currently the Political and Diplomatic Secretary, Ambassador Tom Amolo. Congratulations, Tom. Of course, our formidable Ambassador Catherine Muigai Mwangi, for your experience and distinguished and most effective ambassador and permanent representative to the Africa Union in Addis, as well as Ambassador Lazarus Amayo, our permanent representative to the United Nations in New York. I'm sure he's not here. Yeah, I'm told. Ambassador Amayo buried his late brother last Friday. I convey my deepest and most heartfelt condolences to him and his family. I am confident that this level of dedication and commitment will suffice to all your next efforts and ensure that the agenda of the African Union and that of your country, Kenya, will remain at the core of your assignments at home as well as abroad. I would be remiss if I recognized the trainees and failed to recognize the distinguished group of African diplomats amongst us who actually did the training. Thank you for sharing your experience, insights, and knowledge. Please stand so that we may recognize you. Amongst them, our sister Ambassador Emilia Mkuza from Namibia. Our brothers Ambassador Ndumizo Nzinga from South Africa, who was also our South African High Commissioner to Nairobi at one time, I remember. Ambassador Chimango Edward Chirwa from Malawi. Ambassador Patrick Kapua from Sierra Leone, who I'm told has had to leave earlier, and Ambassador Seja Namane from Lesotho. On behalf of His Excellency the President, the government, and the people of Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, we want to say a very big thank you. To the inductees, I ask you to attend to your duties with ferocious urgency. Kenya's primary interest is the prosperity of our people and the eradication of poverty. This means that what we seek more than anything else from our sister nations is trade and access to opportunities for the benefit of our farmers, industries, and services. This is the ultimate cause of our diplomatic service. The best way to represent Kenya to the world is to present the best we can offer to the world. Your primary message should be Kenya is open for business and our credentials are feasible to all. The fruits of our land, the magnificence of our shores, the majesty of our wildlife, and the industry and innovation of our people. How Kenya is perceived beyond our borders impacts on our economic prospects. Now more than ever before, external perception form the base of our country's reputation, have a lasting effect on our future economic potential, as well as the ability to attract new investments. Our national image is an asset we must manage with care and tact. Our national brand is both a reference frame and a quality indicator for who we are and what we have to offer. As ambassadors, you are custodians of this brand. We are presently aligning our activities to the in our diplomacy. We will be guided by three critical developments. First, we must the image from actual that we reposition ourselves to exploit the new opportunities this change will present us while addressing the many challenges and the disruptions it will conjure. We are witnessing a technological revolution in technological spaces. Emerging technological breakthroughs in the fields of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, robotics, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, nanotechnology, biotechnology, material engineering, autonomous vehicles, and energy storage will radically change our way of life and how we do business. These changes shall exponentially transform the way we live, work, and relate with each other, completely altering and disrupting entire systems of production, management, and governance. We must proactively find our place in this new evolution. Secondly, we must consider that the world has entered into what many pundits are calling the geo-economic world order. Strategic competition between countries in the geo-economic era is increasingly being driven by a quest for markets rather than national resources. Natural resources are becoming cheaper due to the shale gas and oil revolution and other technological advancements that are reducing dependence on traditional energy suppliers. Moreover, the economic and demographic growth, as well as human capital development in the developing world, has made emerging economies a major source of global aggregate demand and relatively cheap qualified labor. These factors have changed the nature of strategic competition. Markets are today more important than natural resources. The winners of this new strategic competition will be countries with growing per capita incomes and large and growing populations. And third, the global system is in a state of constant flux. There are fundamental shifts. Everyone is jostling for space, acquiring greater leverage and demanding a change in the rules to better reflect the emerging balance and growing aspirations of many new actors. These radical challenges render business and entire industries obsolete practically overnight. They shape how countries relate to each other and influence ability to achieve development objectives. Everyone has to go back to the drawing board and grapple with answers and solutions that go beyond short-term, reactionary measures. We have to collectively re-engineer a fresh model of Kenya and Africa that keeps pace with the radical changes we are witnessing externally, as well as responding to the aspirations of the people of Kenya and our continent. This is the primary objective of His Excellency the President's Big Four agenda: to make Kenya a globally competitive, prosperous nation. The Big Four plan is your rule book. It must define your mission as you serve at home and abroad. Our foreign service must be our lead agent in effecting this change. We expect answers from you. What is the best practice across the world in manufacturing, and how will your station contribute towards seeing our manufacturing output grow to 20% of our GDP? How can we achieve 100% food security based on experiences and innovations you encounter across the world? How do we achieve universal health care, and how do we make every Kenyan have a property owner with access to affordable housing? Kenya is counting on you to serve with your eyes and ears very wide open, to spot and interpret global developments and trends as they happen. We are counting on you to contribute to setting Kenya and Africa on the high growth trajectory while promoting and defending our interests and those of our beloved continent, Africa. Kenya has consistently advocated for a rules-based international system and is committed to building bridges and working closely with the entire UN membership to advance the mandate of the Security Council in an inclusive, responsive, and consultative manner. The United Nations Security Council must work for all. We would bring a wealth of experience in preventing and resolution of conflicts, peace negotiations, peace building, peacekeeping, humanitarian response, and post-conflict peace building and reconstruction to the Council. Kenya unreservedly holds that peace and security, development, and human rights are inseparable and mutually reinforcing. We will champion a people-centered, sustainable development approach to securing lasting peace. Our active engagement in global and regional efforts for peaceful settlement of disputes, conflict prevention and resolution has led us to contribute more than 40,000 troops and other personnel to peacekeeping operations in over 40 countries over the decades. We will leverage our presence in the UN Department of Peacekeeping Operations and the Peacebuilding Commission for the benefit of our great continent. The changing asymmetric nature of geopolitical risk and attendant conflict requires the whole continent to remain vigilant. The war on terrorism and violent extremism requires newer, more versatile tools and partnerships, especially since some states have been captured by these rogue elements and now use their vantage point to vigorously undermine concerted multilateral efforts against them. We will work with like-minded nations to seek durable solutions to the challenge of refugees and those torn from their homes by war and civil conflict. Kenya has a long record in conservation and environmental protection. Nature is the one resource we share in common across all nations. We are all joint custodians of this planet. We declare our support for the advancement of the global environmental agenda. Furthermore, Kenya recognizes that sustainable development and peace and security are intertwined. One is not achievable without the other. Lastly, Kenya recognizes that women and the youth play a significant role in maintenance and promotion of peace and security. We will promote the empowerment and inclusion of women and the youth as agents of peace, security, and development. I am therefore proud of the 12 women envoys that are part of the cohort of trained ambassadors and high commissioners designated in line with His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta's commitment to the empowerment of women. I am happy to note from your formal presentations and one-on-one interactions that we are asserting an affirmative African narrative that presents a picture of our people and continent that is honest, uplifting, dignified, and resolute. These envoys will pursue an Africa-centric foreign policy. And let me just say two final things. I don't know whether protocol permits me to, because this is the home of protocol, I guess. To again, on behalf of His Excellency the President, congratulate all of you who will be moving to your new stations after this very intense training. You are aware that you will be carrying the mandate of His Excellency the President and of the government of Kenya and the people of Kenya as you execute your responsibilities, as I said, both here and abroad. We have huge expectations because of the position the government of Kenya has taken, especially on matters to do with our continent. President Uhuru and the government of Kenya are very resolute believers in the African agenda. We have demonstrated before, and we will continue to do, that we believe in this continent, and we believe that this continent has what it takes to move the people and the agenda of this continent to the next level. Maybe it's important for me to say that we did take the position that every African who travels to Kenya, initially on a reciprocal basis, but now we've changed that policy. Every African or any African who wants to come to Kenya can get their visa at the points of entry. Because we believe that it is through interaction and eliminating barriers and using our borders as bridges rather than barriers that we can get our act together as the people of this continent. Secondly, Kenya took the very firm position that for Africa to meaningfully contribute to trade and investment in the world, we must begin with trade and investment amongst ourselves in this continent. And therefore, the promotion of intra-Africa trade became a central position of the government of Kenya. And we are happy that our efforts and the efforts of His Excellency the President in promoting this Africa agenda, where Africans must first and foremost trade with itself before we look for markets outside this continent, that the 1 billion people in this continent, that the huge GDP in this continent can be used first and foremost to benefit this continent and to benefit those outside this continent later. And that is why Kenya became, they say the second, but we are actually the first country to ratify the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I think Ethiopia just managed, because the filing, Ghana just managed ahead of us because I think of communication. But we are proud that that instrument is now part of what this continent is going to look now and going into the future. And I want to ask you, as both African Diplomatic Corps and those of us from Kenya, that is the direction, that is the trajectory. Because as I said in my statement, markets is going to be a very big component of what informs the future prosperity and progress of this continent, not so much natural resources. And therefore, Kenya, we must reposition Kenya to take advantage of the 1 billion people market in Africa. And we must eliminate the barriers and the hindrances that make that market inaccessible. And working together, I am confident that that is going to be a reality in our lifetime. And finally, to our African Diplomatic Corps in Nairobi and in Addis, to say, on behalf again of His Excellency the President and the government and people of Kenya, we want to thank you for the confidence you have demonstrated in supporting Kenya's candidature to the non-permanent seat at the UN. And as I said, we commit that we will prosecute that mandate with the passion, the commitment that it requires, because we believe matters to do with this continent are best handled and prosecuted by the leadership and people in this continent. Our story will not be told until it is told by Africans themselves. We have that confidence. And therefore, our position will be consultative, but equally robust, so that we can reposition this continent appropriately to be able to get a fair share of what this continent deserves. I am of the position that many a times we understate our position, and sometimes we are almost apologetic about our position, and sometimes we don't get the position we should, because we are looking for excuses and instead of projecting our position. We must never feel, for whatever reason, that we are any less than any other member of the international order. And therefore, I want to encourage all of us here as African diplomats and African people that this continent is not going to be profiled in the manner in which it has been for years, that it's a continent of conflict, a continent of disease and hunger. There is a positive narrative that can be and that is real about this continent, about the huge market we have, about the youth of this continent and their education and their potential, and about what this continent can achieve. And it is for us to firmly, forcefully make that narrative happen, so that we are not profiled in the manner in which we have been for years. Those are my very firm beliefs. I don't know whether it offends anybody, but I guess that's what democracy demands. But let me say thank you very much to all of you, and again to reiterate that for those of you who are going to your news stations, you have our support in everything that you will be doing, but we equally have a lot of expectations from you in your news stations. I look forward to seeing the fruits of your service, ladies and gentlemen, as you prosecute Kenya's and Africa's agenda. And with those many remarks, God bless you, God bless Kenya, and God bless our motherland, Africa. Asanteni sana.